Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and I know I'm gonna head right to it. It's been a couple of weeks since I did a video, the longest drought that I've had on this channel over probably like 4 years and 900 plus videos. It's been a couple of weeks. I went on a nice little trip to Mexico with my family to attend and photograph a wedding, and now that I'm back here in Detroit, I figured I'd make my triumphant return with another Patreon feature, but again, this time for the masses. It's been a couple of weeks since I put out anything. I wanted to get this done. I wanted to talk about these shows, but I didn't want to just put it on the Patreon and limit it, especially since it's been so long since I put a video out. So I'm going to put this one on the main feed. This is the last Mike's Musings you're going to have on the main feed. So if you're watching this, or you watch this and you're like, yo, I really fucked with that, then you need to join the Patreon because I'm not going to put any more on the main channel. They're going to go back to the Patreon. But for right now, knocked my mic out. For right now, this is Mike's Musings 12. Mike's Musings is a video series that I generally reserve for the Patreon, in which I briefly talk about some of the shows that I'm watching, but that I don't fully cover on the main channel. Before I get into that, though, I want to talk about what is going to happen on the main channel. As you all may or may not have noticed, I don't have any coverage of the final 2 episodes of The Last of Us since the season is long ended. Rather than doing 2 full breakdown videos for each episode, I'm just going to record 1 video talking about both. Additionally, the release schedule of Andor really affected my ability to cover it in the way that I'd hoped. I recorded a video covering episodes 1 through 3. I don't know if I'm going to release it or not. We'll see. I probably will. But then if I do, what I'm going to do after that is I'm just going to release another video, just one, talking about the remainder of the season. It's not how I wanted the coverage to be, but when a show as dense as Andor releases 3 episodes at a time, it's just really hard to cover. Like, it would be like if I had to record 1 video covering 3 episodes of Industry or Succession. Like, it's an incredibly daunting task to do everything for just 1, and to have to do it for 3 and then only have a week before it's another 3. It's just a lot. And I'm also undecided on how I want to handle The Handmaid's Tale. Like, it used to be a staple on this channel. I have full coverage of seasons 4 and 5, but in all honesty, that's a show that probably should have ended a couple seasons ago, and it just kind of feels like it's treading water at this point. I wasn't even particularly interested in watching season 6, the final season, but and it got off to a pretty underwhelming start. But it picked up around episode 4 or 5, I'm not sure, and I'm not done with it yet. I still have to watch the finale. I almost feel like I owe it to that show to put out something talking about the final season. Like, it just feels weird to have 20 episodes, 20 videos of coverage, and have watched 5 seasons of this show to just pretend like season 6 didn't happen. But I'm still undecided if I'm going to do like a whole video talking about the season or make it part of the next Mike's Musings. That's probably what's going to happen. But I'm going to work on backfilling coverage over the course of the next 3 weeks or so. I don't know what that's going to look like, and a lot of it may end up on a Patreon. So again, sign up for that if you haven't already. But that's the plan until season 4 of The Bear is released on June 25th. I'll binge that, do 1 video as I've done for the previous 3 seasons. And then I'll resume episode by episode coverage of a show in July with season 3 of Apple TV's Foundation. All right. So now that I've got the housekeeping out of the way, I want to talk about some of the stuff that I've watched during my time off. So in this edition of Mike's Musings, I'm going to talk about Murderbot. So far, we've got 4 episodes of that. The Rehearsal, that's complete. That's the Nathan Fielder show on HBO. MobLand, that is also complete. That's on Paramount+. The Studio, also complete. That's on Apple TV. The 2-part documentary Pee-wee as Himself. It's 2 parts, so it's complete. That's on HBO or on Max, whatever you want to call it. And HBO Max, whatever. And then lastly, the new film from the creator of Succession, Jesse Armstrong, the new film called Mountainhead. So having said all that out loud, it sounds like this video could be a lot. I might end up splitting it into 2 parts. I don't know. We'll see. Kind of depends on how long the video is once I'm done with it. Anyway, I'll start with Murderbot because I have the least to say about that one, and everything else I'm going to talk about is complete. Whereas, like I said, we only got 4 episodes of Murderbot so far out of 10. So real quick, the premise is that Alexander Skarsgård plays a robot called a security unit. And he gains sentience at the very beginning of the first episode. But he knows that he'll be decommissioned if he makes it known. So he pretends to continue to be like a robot with no free will, even as he's assigned to protect a research group. The gist of the show is that the research group encounters problems on their mission, all while growing increasingly suspicious of their sec unit. And the show interjects some comedy as well, largely with the sec unit's internal monologue. Right now, while I do enjoy watching the show from week to week, almost entirely due to the performance of Alexander Skarsgård, it doesn't seem to be particularly good at anything else. Like, the supporting characters, not great, bordering on cartoonish at times, depending on which character you're talking about. They're surprisingly oblivious, inept. Not entirely so, but quite a bit. And it just makes me struggle to kind of take them seriously, even though they're frequently met with very serious situations. And then it's just not very funny either. Like, a lot of the humor comes from, again, the sec unit's internal monologuing. And after 4 relatively short episodes, like I think the episode lengths are closer to 20 minutes than 30, like the gimmick has already gotten kind of repetitive and tired. The gimmick of like the humor coming from the sec unit's kind of like snarky internal responses. Like one of the researchers says something and sec unit internally monologues a snarky response about how the researcher doesn't know shit and he'd rather go watch his trashy soap operas. And like, that's barely funny to begin with. And that's pretty much all the show does in the way of humor at this point is just snarky internal monologuing. Skarsgård's taking fairly weak material and elevating it both like effortlessly and with a great deal of effort. Like on one hand, he's pretty deadpan through the whole thing. So it comes off as effortless. Like, oh, that's easy. You could just, make a straight face and then they play whatever it is that you're supposed to be thinking over the, over the soundtrack or whatever, or not the soundtrack, but they just play that audio, right? He doesn't actually say it. But somehow, with little to no change in facial expression, he has conveyed a wide range of emotions that help to both increase and alleviate the tension, depending on whatever it is that he's thinking. And it's quite a performance that, even though it looks effortless, it must require an insane amount of effort to be able to convey so much doing so little. Like, I don't want to pass judgment on the show right now. Again, 10 episodes. We're only 4 through, not even halfway yet. Just as of right now, I see a show that has had potential, but through 4 episodes, it's just been pretty underwhelming. It's fine. Nothing special. I'll continue to watch it because it's moderately enjoyable and the episodes are really short and easily digestible. But like 40% of the way through, I'm pretty unimpressed. But, we'll see. It could get better. I'm not as sold on it as a lot of other people are. So that's all I got to say about Murderbot. Next up, I want to talk about The Rehearsal. Nathan Fielder's been all over the place as of late. His first show, Nathan For You, it ran 4 seasons from 2013 to 2017 on Comedy Central. And then he was gone for a little bit. And he returned with season 1 of The Rehearsal on HBO in 2022. Then he had another show called The Curse on Showtime that aired like late 2023, early 2024. And now he's back early to mid 2025 with a second season of The Rehearsal. And I kind of have a complicated relationship with Nathan. I talked about season 1 of The Rehearsal in actually the very first Mike's Musings that I ever did. I talked about season 1 of The Rehearsal, and that's no longer on the Patreon. I put all of the Mike's Musings prior to this one onto the main channel not too long ago. So they spent most of their time on the Patreon, but you can watch any of them right now. But I talked about season 1 of The Rehearsal on that very first one, and I struggled with understanding what Nathan was trying to accomplish in season 1 because I didn't quite get how much of it was real or not. And that's ultimately kind of the point, right? Like that uncertainty regarding the authenticity of what we're seeing is what makes that show or anything Nathan does really so uncomfortable to watch. And the concept behind The Rehearsal is that Nathan uses HBO's money to recreate scenarios that a person might struggle to deal with so that they can practice that scenario over and over before experiencing it in real life. For example, in the first episode, there's a guy who's a member of a trivia team and he wants to practice telling the other members of the trivia team that he didn't graduate from college. And he's nervous about doing this because he's worried his teammates are going to lose respect for him, stuff like that. Nathan puts all of HBO's money to use, not all of it, but like a lot of it, into building a fake version of the bar that this guy played trivia in, and he hires actors to study and then play this guy's teammates so he can rehearse having this difficult conversation about not finishing college with his team. The next episode, it revolves around a woman named Angela who wants to rehearse having a child, and throughout the remainder of the season, this is kind of like largely where we spend our time, is with the Angela child family situation. And all sorts of issues come up throughout these remaining, I think it was a 6-episode season like this one, so the other 5. Angela backs out. Nathan has to swap out babies every few hours because of child labor laws. Babies as actors. They have to rehearse this kid growing up, adolescence, being a teenager. And then ultimately Nathan steps in as like this fake husband to Angela and then like a father to this pretend kid. And the season ends with, well, it's not a pretend kid. It's a real kid, but it's not Nathan's kid. And the season ends with Nathan like blurring the line between pretending to be this kid's father and just actually claiming to be this kid's father. And it's so uncomfortable. And it's like, is this for real? Is he fucking with us? And my problem with season 1 was that it kind of felt like it really had no, I don't want to say it had no point. It had a point, but like, was it a point worth making? Really, like, let's have the people rehearse tough conversation. Like, okay, like, do I need this really? Like, it felt like Nathan had a plan when he started making the show. The show became something else, and then he just kind of ran with it. Plus, the stuff with Nathan blurring the line between pretending to be a father and actually being one, it kind of felt like a bridge too far for a show that seemingly didn't have much of a plan or much of a goal or much of a direction. It was unclear what Nathan was going for. It was rarely funny, and it felt kind of like pointlessly uncomfortable. And look, I'm not going to say I generally don't mind uncomfortable. I like uncomfortable when watching a show or film. But when it's that extreme to the point of involving kids and parenting, I feel like it needs to mean something and it needs to have an important end goal. And that just felt like Nathan going, this is getting out of hand, but fuck it, let's roll with it. And like, I didn't like that. It just felt like the discomfort levels were too high with too little reward, too little justification for all of it. And the whole season felt like Nathan was still trying to figure out what he wanted the show to be. Not this season, not season 2. This season had direction. It had a goal, and that goal was important, and it was a goal that mattered. And not just mattered in the sense of making a TV show. It matters to everybody. Every single person walking this planet, that goal matters to. And when you have stakes, real stakes, now that discomfort, it hits a lot harder, and it feels a lot more meaningful. Because this season felt like Nathan did have a clear plan. Felt like he did know what he wanted to do and why. And it felt like everything he went for was more effective because of it. Like in this season, the focus is on airline safety. Nathan decides he wants to figure out why plane crashes happen. And he ultimately arrives at a large factor for that being the captain and first officer's inability or lack of desire to communicate. Maybe Nathan just has a natural talent for finding relevant topics, but the fact that plane crashes are a big fucking deal right now in the news made this show feel even more timely, even more important, and even more emotionally impactful. And he hemorrhages HBO's money, man. Like building a complete replica of an airport and staging rehearsals for these captains and first officers to get past these communication issues and ultimately, in his mind, to help prevent future plane crashes that take place because the first officer doesn't want to step up and say, hey, I'm going to take over here, or hey, we should do this. He wants to help make these first officers more assertive. And we meet several people along the way with their own personal issues that Nathan attempts to help solve. And most of these situations, like, they dial the cringe meter all the way up to 10. And again, the blurring of reality actually adds to the discomfort here. But Nathan balances the humor and shock value of seeing some of these scenes by clearly being passionate about a matter of life and death. And I think that's what really elevated this season for me. Simply put, this season felt important. He also did some very interesting self-exploration in a way that was both tasteful and heartening. Self-exploration, I mean that in the very traditional sense, not in a lurid sense. But he doesn't he doesn't directly say it or ever fully confirm it, but he seems to like lightly explore the idea that he may be autistic. And he did it in a way that I thought perfectly balanced. This is funny with, but wait, could he actually be autistic and be discovering this for the first time right now? And again, the lack of certainty regarding the realistic or non-realistic nature of the show made that so much more effective. Like, I'm like, is he autistic? Like, is he in denial or is he just fucking around? Like who knows, right? And I'm not going to spoil how the season ends, but we learn exactly to what degree Nathan was committed to solving this issue. And it's far beyond what anyone would have guessed coming in. And while I think a lot of this is meant to make you laugh and to make you feel uncomfortable, I came out of this season really respecting what Nathan tried to accomplish, what he did accomplish, and how he managed to still find a way to make it entertaining and elicit like genuine discomfort from the viewer. So a high recommendation for me on season 2 of The Rehearsal. Again, another show that's currently sitting in my top 10. I said again because I've recorded another video that I have not posted yet. That's what I'm referencing. And I'm probably going to post this one first. So that, again, isn't going to mean anything. But anyway, next up, I want to talk about MobLand. It's a 10-episode series that just wrapped up its first season and maybe only season on Paramount+. It stars Pierce Brosnan, Helen Mirren, Tom Hardy, and it basically revolves around a war between two mob families. Pretty surface level stuff here. And the show rarely elevates above its very, very well-tread premise. But this show reminded me of Landman, another Paramount Plus show, in that it had some like really high highs. It had the potential to be great, but it had a lot of glaring flaws that held it back from being so. So let's briefly talk about what worked. And I want to start with the performances. You've seen mob families in television and in film 8 million times throughout the course of your life. But Pierce Brosnan, Helen Mirren, and Tom Hardy, they give you some unique and fun performances on this show that make it extremely fucking watchable every week. Brosnan and Mirren, they play Conrad and Maeve Harrigan, respectively, husband and wife and head of the Harrigan family. Tom Hardy is Harry D'Souza, and he's essentially like their fixer. And they get into a beef with another mob family, the Stevenson family, in episode 1, and the beef just escalates from there all season. Tom Hardy's Harry is not terribly far off from his Bane character in The Dark Knight Rises, in that the quieter and more intense he plays the character, the more intimidating the character is. Harry dominates every scene, every scene that he's in. And everything surrounding the Harry character could be complete shit. And I'd still check in to watch this guy just live his life every week. That's how great Tom Hardy is in this role. That's how captivating the Harry character is. It's just great work. And it feels like it's really just Tom Hardy, kind of like, it feels like he doesn't even have to try that hard to be this kind of character. It just works for him. Brosnan and Mirren are endlessly entertaining to watch as well. Sometimes they're at each other's throats. Sometimes they're plotting behind each other's backs. Sometimes they're even funny. But both actors get to showcase a full range of their talents in these roles. And it was really good to see that. You know, I'm used to seeing both of them play not the same character, but within a certain range, that, you know, playing a similar character over the past couple of decades. So it's cool to see them getting out of what I would perceive to be their comfort zones. I also really like the point at which the show escalated. Like it got off to a slow start. It escalated, kind of plateaued for a little bit, and then it finished strong. And at the beginning, because I think I talked about it briefly in the last Mike's Musings 11, I said I was into anything that was involving Harry, but the war between the two families was doing nothing for me. Well, around episode 4 or so, I don't remember which one, the war escalates. And the manner in which it escalated was immediately added to my great moments of the year list. Because you keep a great moments. Yes, I keep a great moments of the year list. And this was the first entry on the list this year. And it ain't going nowhere. I fucking loved this moment. And unfortunately, from that point on, the show did kind of get stuck in the mud. Like after this escalation moment, it seemed like it had maybe like 3, maybe 4 episodes where it kind of was stuck in place, didn't really go anywhere. It introduced subplots that were either uninteresting, seemingly didn't tie in with the rest of the show, or in some cases, both. And I think this is where the show really suffered. Like, if we just got to see Tom Hardy's character get himself and the Harrigan family out of various jams, I think you got a recipe for a successful show. But it tried to do too much. It pulled in these weak subplots. It got sloppy and tough to follow with like weird editing choices, weird shifts in tone. It struggled with clearly conveying what was happening in some of these subplots. Like there was a subplot with one of the daughters. There was a subplot with one of the sons that's played by the guy, Paddy Considine, that played Viserys on House of the Dragon. This show struggled with giving those subplots proper attention, and it suffered because of that too. Just became kind of a mess whenever Hardy, Brosnan, or Mirren weren't on the screen, and that's unfortunate. But more of this show was good than wasn't, but we needed that mix to be closer to like 80-20 and not like 55-45. So I enjoyed this show, and I'm in on a second season. I don't know if this season impressed enough to get a second one, but if it does get a second season, I hope that, like the Rehearsal, it's a bit more focused and that it finds its footing. Both those shows seem to struggle with that in their first season, and that's probably the one and only time the Rehearsal will be compared to MobLand by anyone other than me. So next up, I want to briefly talk about The Studio. I say briefly because as a comedy, there's not a ton to cover here. You don't not going to get too in depth talking about a comedy, but The Studio is another show, this time another works, that's holding a place in my top 10. It stars Seth Rogen as the head of a movie studio called Continental Studios. And the best way I could describe it is that it's kind of like the comedy version of a Tarantino movie. And what I mean by that, you're like, what? Those of you are seeing, what the fuck is he talking about? What I mean by that is Quentin Tarantino makes movies for himself. He makes movies that he likes, that are influenced by what he liked coming up as a kid, as a cinephile, coming up in the industry as a director and actor. If you're into movies, and like into movies, not just like, oh, I watch movies. Like, no, if you are into movies, movies are your shit, you're going to appreciate a lot of what Quentin Tarantino does because all of his movies are for cinephiles like him. Yeah, someone who's not a cinephile can still enjoy a lot of his films. I know many people who are not cinephiles that find something to like in the vast majority of Quentin Tarantino's filmography. But if you're a real film head, Tarantino shit is for you. The Studio is the comedic version of that dynamic. Like, Rogen, it's been clear he's done comedy his whole career by and large, but it's been clear from day one that Seth Rogen is also a cinephile. And he's now made a TV show that is for cinephiles. Like, and it's same as the Quentin Tarantino thing. Like, if you're not a cinephile, you're still going to find it funny. You can still find this show entertaining. But if you are a cinephile, you are really going to enjoy this show. So Rogen plays Matt Remick, like I said, the head of Continental Studios. He wants to make high-end art, but that is also profitable, proving that there is an audience for those sorts of films. At the same time, the expectation is for his films to make money. Duh. And we live in a world where Barbie is going to make a lot more money than, say, The Brutalist. So while Matt wants Continental to have a balanced slate, the focus is clearly on his tentpole film for the summer, the Kool-Aid movie. This show, the Studio, satirizes the fuck out of, I feel like I really slurred satirizes there, satirizes the fuck out of the film industry, often to hilarious effect, and features a ton of celebrities just really getting to chew up the scenery here. Like, Zoe Kravitz and Bryan Cranston in particular really get the show out, especially in the final 2 episodes. Dave Franco does as well, but that's pretty much par of the course for Dave Franco. But also, side note, at the same time, Dave Franco's presence and being able to do what he does, it was kind of like like a sad reminder of the dissolution of the relationship between Seth and his brother James Franco. But the show has also a lot of love for your household cinephile. And in addition to all the ways in which it lampoons the industry, it's like magnificently shot, magnificently edited. It pays homage to various films and various genres throughout the season. Like there's an episode that's a oneer, which I generally, like now I'm starting to find to be an overused technique nowadays. But this oneer, it does a great job of interjecting some freshness into the concept by having Seth Rogen's character constantly and hilariously almost fuck up the oneer. So it's kind of like a oneer within a oneer almost. Like they're filming a oneer, but then the episode itself is also a oneer. Like I stopped looking for it and paying attention to it after a certain point, but this entire season seemed to be like more oneer than not. Like there was so many moments where I'm just like, am I watching another oneer again? And like, I don't think any full episode was, but it's utilized a lot. And I thought they did such a good job of it that I became comfortable with it without feeling like I gotta look for it. Like that's something I do a lot with oneers is like when I know it's happening or when I catch on that it's happening, I start looking for like little tricks. Like what are they doing here? What are they doing there? And this show was so good and so entertaining that I acknowledged that there were a lot of times where I felt like I was watching a oneer, but I just kind of like sat back and like, I'm not even going to dissect this. I'm just going to sit here and enjoy the ride. There was another episode that was kind of like a noir detective Chinatown kind of episode. The entire series actually almost seemed like it wanted to take place in like a 70s era of film that you could tell that Seth Rogen just wishes he had been alive for. Like it's just a hilarious homage to film made by one of the funniest people of this generation, and it was a joy to watch every week. Like it's one of those shows it's relentlessly watchable and enjoyable, and you could see it being really special for several years, kind of like a white version of Atlanta. I'm going to stop talking about the studio there. I don't know if there's a better way for me to end talking about the studio than calling it a white version of Atlanta. So I'm going to move on to talking about the new HBO docuseries, Pee-wee as himself. So I thought this was a great docuseries. It was moving. It was weird. It was funny. It was a lot like Pee-wee's Playhouse. So for those who may not know, Pee-wee Herman was a character played by Paul Reubens primarily in the 80s. My experience with him was that I watched Pee-wee's Playhouse, the Saturday morning show that he had, and I saw the movies that were made, Big Top Pee-wee and Pee-wee's Big Adventure. For me, Pee-wee was never a character. We never met Paul Reubens, we as in like the children of that time. Pee-wee was the guy. Like anytime you saw Paul Reubens, he was Pee-wee. You didn't know about Paul Reubens. I found out during this documentary that was very much intentional. Then in, I want to say 91, I was still very much a kid in 91. Pee-wee was arrested for jerking off in an adult movie theater. That's when I learned that Pee-wee was, in fact, a character and that the guy who played him, Paul Reubens, had just gotten himself into a lot of trouble. Even as a kid, I understood the controversy was more so surrounding the fact that the star of a kid's show was caught doing something so salacious, and it was more about that and less about the act itself. But it was only through watching this documentary that I learned that the adults at that time largely had the same reaction that I had to it once I got older, and that my wife had to it once I told her what happened. Essentially, the reaction was, okay, so he was in the dark at an adult movie theater watching porn and he started jerking off. Is that not kind of expected? Like, is that not what you're supposed to do? I'm not going to say supposed to do, but I would figure it's at the very least acceptable to do. But Pee-wee never really recovered from that. Paul ended up getting more mature roles later in his career, but it was never the same, and that was pretty much it for Pee-wee for all intents and purposes. And for me, as someone who grew up in the 80s, All I know is that a guy whose show I loved watching got caught up in a scandal and his career never recovered. This documentary covered Paul's childhood, what it was like trying to become an actor in the 70s as like a closeted gay man, and leading into the creation of the Pee Wee Herman character out of this improv group that Paul was in called the Groundlings. All of this was new information to me. Like, it was super educational because some of my earliest memories involve characters like Pee Wee Herman or even Elvira, a character played by Cassandra Peterson, who was also a member of the Groundlings. I like, for me, those characters just exist in my memory. Like, I remember Pee Wee. I remember Elvira. I don't know where they came from. In the case of Elvira, I didn't even know where I remembered her from. If somebody says Elvira, I could immediately picture her. I knew who it was. I knew I'd seen her. But like, where? Like, I don't even know what I was watching, let alone who she was, where she came from, any of those sort of things. But this documentary gave me the background info on how Pee Wee came to be, as well as the other characters who appeared on that show, like the Captain Carl character, who was played by Phil Hartman, rest in peace. And then once Paul's scandal hits, followed by another scandal accusing him of having child pornography, everything just started to fall apart around him. Legal issues, career issues, the dissolution of friendships like the one he had with Phil Hartman. It's all really sad. And generally, I'd give side eye toward a documentary largely created by the subject of the documentary. But when you look back on Paul's life and everything he dealt with, particularly given how LGBTQ people are treated now versus how they were treated back when he was trying to break into the industry, I think it's important that he be able to give his side and his perspective. Like, he was a weird guy, almost to an annoying degree based on what I saw in this documentary. But like, I don't know if I could deal with somebody who's always on like that. But that just kind of feeds into the sadness, because you realize that even now, at the end of his life, he still can't fully be himself. He has to be somebody else for portions of time. And that's sad to me. But big recommendation for me on this docuseries, even if you don't know who Pee Wee Herman was, and even if you dislike him or don't care about him. Like, it's a story about a gay man struggling to navigate Hollywood, finally finding his purpose, becoming a huge star, and then having it all taken away for reasons that would barely make the news in 2025. And then he finally, he tells a story right before he dies. He died in 2023. And all the way up until he dies, he's like hiding something about himself. Like, in this case, it was cancer. That's what ended up killing him. But even in this documentary, at no point does he mention that he has cancer. They tell us in like a little chyron at the end, like, yo, he had cancer and that's how he died. And he kept that a secret. Like, that's just sad. Like, that this man felt like he could never be fully who he was, even to the point of sharing a cancer diagnosis that like if we knew that he was dying, he would have gotten his flowers, especially because like who gives a fuck about that now? Like, it's the same thing with Clinton. Like, around that same time with the Lewinsky scandal, it was like, okay, yeah, he cheated on his wife. That's shitty, but that doesn't make him unfit to be president. And Pee Wee or Paul Rubens getting caught jerking off, and like, it's not like he was watching fucking Lilo and Stitch. Like, he was he was in a porno movie theater. Like, and he lost everything because of that, and he never fully recovered. And it's just sad. And it's only 2 episodes. Each one of them is as long as a feature-length film, by the way, but it's endlessly entertaining and interesting. The time flies by. Big recommend for me on that one. And lastly, I'm going to keep this as one video because I was like, if this video is like an hour, I might split it. But I'm at 35 minutes. I'm not going to be talking about Mountainhead for very long, so this is just going to be one video. But lastly, I want to talk about Mountainhead, the new film from Jesse Armstrong, creator of Succession. Simply put, do not recommend. I recommend everything else I've seen so far. Well, iffy on Murderbot, but very strong do not recommend on Mountainhead. It takes the satirization of the rich that was one of the least interesting aspects of Succession and makes an entire film about it, completely removing any kind of like character complexity or drama. This film is quite literally nothing more than let's watch rich people be assholes and make fun of how silly and lame they are. That's it. That's good as part of a larger picture or goal like it was on Succession. It can't be the entire point. And that's all this is. That's the point of this movie. The characters are insufferable. It goes for funny, as satires tend to do. But for me, it comes woefully short of funny and only lands on like eye roll inducingly irritating. Like after about an hour, it stops like self-filleting and tries to be about something. But by then it was too late, and even when it tried, it didn't work for me. It became this cycle where every few minutes a group of characters would kind of like isolate themselves from another character, and then they would just have like this douchey fucking conversation that's meant to be funny, but it's really just a bunch of like bro tech talk. It felt like HBO went to Jesse Armstrong and was like, hey, here's some loot. Want to throw some shit together? And then Armstrong thought about it for like 3 seconds. It was like, sure, I can throw some shit together. And then 3 days later, he handed them the completed fucking movie. And they're like, what the fuck? How'd you do this? So like, why did this take 3 days? And he's like, sorry, it took 3 days. I had to spend some time writing it first. Like, that's how thrown together and lazy and half-assed this thing felt. It had no purpose. It had no point. It had no direction. It was just like, let's make fun of rich tech bros for an hour and 40 minutes. And like that's not a movie worth making to me, let alone worth watching. Like, maybe if you at least successfully made it funny, but it didn't even hit that benchmark. Like, yeah, you get a couple of chuckles here and there, but like for the most part, it's not funny. It's just troubling. Like, it's like you sit there and you're like that's really supposed to be like Elon Musk or Sam Altman or something like that. Like, and then you just feel like, oh God, you're hit with that reality. Like, oh God, there's people really like this and they have a whole lot of power. Really hard to laugh when that's happening. And that's, well, hold on. Before I move into something else, I did want to give it one compliment in that I thought the performances were pretty solid for what they were. Like, I don't think any of the actors were really given much to work with here, but they all made the best out of what they got. And that's really the only good thing I could say about that movie. Like, no matter how much you may have loved Succession, and I'm telling you, not many of y'all loved it more than I did, you don't need to watch this movie. And that's really it. Like, that's all I got for this packed version of Mike's Musings. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I do know now. I'm approaching 40 minutes. I'm just going to put this one out there. Yeah, so I'm not going to split it up. But again, make sure you share this to your social media. Like, subscribe, check out all my other content, check out all my other Mike's Musings, check out all the other shows I've covered. I got over 900, probably closer to 1,000 videos on this channel. Probably closer to 1,000 than 900. So, check out my content, like it, share it, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.